Do you recall when you first learned that you were a grandparent?
Yeah. It was Jana and Trevor.
Tell me about that. What do you remember about it?
I don't remember anything specific except that it was very exciting to have my little girl having one of my grandchildren. Very interesting. I don't remember any details other than that I smiled a lot.
Are you bored, Lena?
and worried some.
It's time to feed her. Oh, fun. Shall we do it? Sure.
How are you involved in your grandchildren's lives?
Only as much as their parents wanted us to be.
Are you bored?
Since you asked that question, I've tried to think of specific things, but I frankly can't remember any other than that we were keenly interested in all of them.
I'm going to go use the restroom. I'll be right back.
How was I involved in their lives? I don't remember, Jordan. I don't remember if I have any remembrance of being involved in their life. Their lives.
What are some specific things you'd like to do as a grandparent?
That I like to do as a grandparent?
Yeah.
I like to go to their house and just listen and look, be on the back row, peeking through into their doing or whatever. That's the best answer I can give you, I guess.
It's a good one. How did your relationship change with your children as you became a grandparent and they became parents?
The major thing I could see is that they no longer were just my children dealing with their relationship between me and them or us and them as individuals. But suddenly now they had this whole new problem and opportunity, and they had a child of their own, and they were excited about that. And my perception is my job was to stay out of the way, and yet to show up often enough to let them know we were interested and that they were all right.
We're going to feed in just a second.
Okay.
I'll wait for you. Uh-huh.
All right. How are your attitudes and feelings different as a grandparent versus being a parent?
Frankly, I don't think they are different. I don't think they are different. Whether they're dealing with your children or your grandchildren, and now we're dealing with great-grandchildren. Of course, they're still very small little babies still. But they are, the feeling is that they are children of they are descendants of an eternal Father who created their spirits, and that we need to not damage them in any way. And that every one of them needs to be patted on the back and complimented and loved. And your mother and I know how to do all of those. Very interesting.
Boom! Haven't heard that in a long time. How come we don't get sonic booms anymore?
Maybe we're subsonic over here.
Maybe we got our sonic now. There's no more boom.
All right. Are there things that you do with your grandchildren that you wish you had done with your children? As you've learned things over the years?
I don't think so. What I do with my grandchildren, this is not something that I consciously, deliberately said, okay, now I'm going to start. It just kind of comes naturally to me that I want them to feel good about themselves. I need to not make. I don't know how. I don't do this at all to have them have a good feeling about me. What I do with them is so they will feel good about themselves. For instance, I told this little Leila recently, Leila, I want to tell you a secret. I'm very proud of you. And 2 or 3 days later I said, now what was my secret? And she's repeated it to me. Now what effect it has on her, I don't know. But it can't help but be valuable to them to let them know that they're valuable to you and that you feel good about them. It's very interesting, very fascinating.
With the wisdom of hindsight, are there things that you wish that your parents had done?
Not that I can think of. I've said this before to other
I haven't
people.
seen that notebook for.
One of the greatest influences in my life, always, clear up till when she died,
No, it's not.
was that my mother loved me anyway. Not because I was perfect or her favorite child or anything else, but that she communicated to me in probably thousands of ways that she loved me anyway, and that word anyway was important. When I was young and I was a smart aleck or a knothead or undependable, she loved me anyway. And that was a very, I didn't know whether my dad loved me or not. We never did, my mother took care of that. I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think it does.
Well, it's 5 till. Shall we jump it in? Okay.
Do you want to witness the
No,
feeding?
I'm coming.
I think so.
All right, we'll take a break. How did you feel when you were with your grandparents?
Oh, you already put dry sheets on.
I hardly knew them. My grandmother Udall died when my dad was 15. My grandfather Lee died in 1924. So I never did know those two.
Maybe Marcy can help us. All right.
And my grandmother Lee died in 1933, and so I knew her, but very little. And my grandfather Udall died in 1936 or something. But he was very feeble and very old when I knew him. My greatest memory of him is that one time they had a huge family reunion up in the White Mountains somewhere, up Springerville area, and we all slept in tents out in the mountains there. But I was too little to know much about it. He had he was the oldest of his father was David Udall, and he was David King Udall. His youngest brother was Joseph Udall, and I don't know how many were in between them, but quite a number. And they lived in Springerville. He was a cattle person, largely.
Bye. Bye.
And I've always wished that I've always thought that my grandfather Lee, John David Lee, he was a son of John D. Lee, the famous one. I've always thought that I was probably quite a bit like him. don't know why that was, but that was one of the thoughts I grew up with, which was all right with me. So my feelings about my grandparents is that they were very old when I was very young,
Yeah.
sort of. That's a very simple, basic summary.
How would you describe yourself as a grandparent?
That's easy for me to do. My description of myself as a grandparent, that I tried to never be part of any problem with any of my grandchildren or children. That if I could be helpful and boost them up and make them feel better about themselves or their situation, I would do that. Otherwise, I would stay out of the way. I guess that's the best summary.
Tell something that you would love to do with your grandchildren.
I remember once we took, when Blake and Doug were 5 or 6 years old, they came over here and stayed with us for 2 or 3 days. I think Colin was back in Mesa by then. And I was hauling a 1.5-inch pipe. We took a whole bunch of it to the base of the mountain out north and east from Safford on the other side of the river. And I was hauling it on top of had a 3/4-ton 4-wheel drive Ford pickup with a heavy rack on the back. And because so much of the road sloped off to the right, we tied these pipe on top of the rack on the other side. And so we'd ease along. And I remember Doug Udall, when he was standing up, little enough, he stood up in the seat. And he had his arm around my neck, and every 30 seconds or so he would say, "Don't go too fast, Grandpa."
We just spent there together for 60 years.
And other than that, I don't remember much about my dealings with my grandchildren, except I tried to make them feel okay about themselves and their parents. And even Willie, I remember one time, Jeff was as tall as Willie and maybe bigger, but Willie was giving him he was cussing. Well, I don't know if he's cussing, but he was bawling him out. He was right in his face, and Jeffrey was. I could see he was not taking this very well, and I got close enough that I could kind of intercede just a little bit, and I could tell that if Jeffrey ever went ahead and did what he was thinking of doing, Willie would probably hurt him, and we'd have a problem on our hands. So we've invited Jeff immediately. Let a day or two go by, and then we invited Jana to let Jeff come and live with us, and he did. He lived over here with us for I think it was a full year. Went to school here, and our milk costs tripled. He was a big eater, and I've always had very close feelings about Jeff. Well, in fact, I have all of them. They're all unique people. And they have the from their grandmother Udall, from my wife, your mother, they inherited a good brain. She was a good student, and so all of them were too. I guess that's the best I can say to you about that, whatever that was.
How would you like your grandchildren to remember you?
That I liked them, that I was kind and helpful to them, and friendly and brave, clean, reverent, and whatever else. That they don't need. I don't need to try to get them to think I'm some kind of an expert or a great guy or anything. But if I could influence their thinking, it would be that Grandpa was loyal to the church and that he tried to get us to do the same, and we think he succeeded at that, and with a little help from each one of us. There's not any of them that have problems with the church. I guess there's two of them who kind of have had and probably still do have, but they're not opposed and they're not bad people. And one of the very complimentary things that has come to me is that so many of them have invited me to perform their temple wedding, and I can still do that for my own blood descendants, but only if I get a special approval from the office of the First Presidency. And I've done that for a number of them. I can't remember how many, but I even went to Salt Lake and performed in one of those in a sealing room in the Salt Lake Temple. That was a very interesting experience. Can't remember why, but except that it just was. Then I performed one in the new Snowflake Temple. Other than that, I can't remember how many I've done, 10 or 15 or something, have been done in the Arizona Temple here. And I feel highly honored when they request that. That's as near as I can answer your question.
All right. Well, those are all the grandparenting questions I had.
Okay. I can stop being a grandparent now?
All right, I'll switch the tape.